Xbox, I mean, there's no better way to frame your situation than you made GameStop look good. The GameStop nowadays, that is awful and a shell of themselves. We run a series over on Retro Rebound called the GameStop Roulette. It's exactly what it sounds like. We have dozens upon dozens of videos of us just buying random stuff from GameStop off their website, usually retro games, and just seeing the terrible quality these goods come in for the price they charge. They charge complete in-box prices for discs that come in just like a little sleeve of paper. If that wasn't enough, when you walk in their storefronts nowadays, you see more Funko Pops and t-shirts than actual video games. We're talking about that GameStop looking good compared to Xbox. How they got there is a funny story, but also we're going to talk about what Xbox executives had to say about this Game Pass price bump, including Xbox president Sarah Bond saying Game Pass is still profitable, and this was before the price hike hit. Okay, cool, good to know that you're going to make more money off of us, but also what does Xbox's communications director have to say about the Game Pass price jump? We know Xbox comms has always been rock solid out here. So let's break all of it down. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here, you're into what's going on with Xbox, or I'm sorry, Microsoft Gaming. We got to just get into that flow, man. Xbox is so dead in my opinion. Like, they're just, again, a shell of themselves. And I think maybe that's why them and GameStop make a good couple. Before we get into that, it's all positive here in the land of Xbox, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, you fire up your Xbox after a long day of work, boom, advertisement, Xbox Game Pass. Get even more with Ultimate. Starting November 4th, subscription prices will update in applicable regions. Probably a good time to mention that Xbox jumped the price more than 50% in other regions. Like in Brazil, it's 100% more. They doubled the price. So yeah, they're like taking advantage of specific territories as well. It's messed up, man. And again, they try to push this whole thing like, hey, it's worth it. You know, we got Fortnite in our $30 bundle, which is usually targeting casual gamers who don't play anything other than Fortnite. But certainly Fortnite gamers will want to spend $30 a month on our Game Pass Ultimate program, right? It makes no sense the audience you're targeting versus what Game Pass actually serves to the core gamer. But again, it's all positive. It's all groovy here. So what has GameStop done to make themselves the hero? Well, beyond just kind of pumping themselves up saying like, don't call it a comeback, bro, like them getting ditched to the side for Game Pass and people coming back to them. Look, I'll tell you this right now, as someone who does a lot of retro game shopping, GameStop's quality of goods is fucking terrible, bro. Do not spend your money here. But I wouldn't blame you. I wouldn't blame you if you did buy a month of Game Pass through them, because they are keeping Game Pass Ultimate at $20. So Microsoft is changing the value to $30 a month, but if you buy a month of Game Pass Ultimate through GameStop, it's still the usual $20. Or if you're a pro member, for whatever reason nowadays, it's $18.99. This was done after GameStop posted Game Pass, $29.99 every month. You own nothing. GameStop, buy once, own forever. Math isn't hard. I mean, they're not wrong, but here's the thing that I find really interesting, right? Because when they put that tweet up, I went, oh, you know what? I want to do a little bit of quick math on this one. If I bought every first party release from Xbox this year, how much would that run me? And mind you, this is already a bit of an unrealistic scenario, because I imagine many of us out there have, out of this lineup here, games that we probably wouldn't end up buying. What I'm going to be talking about is Avowed, South of Midnight, Oblivion Remastered, Doom, Tony Hawk 3+4 Remake, Call of Duty Black Ops 7, Outer Worlds 2, and Ninja Gaiden 4. I think some of these games are applicable to all of us, but I imagine playing all of these is not really a realistic scenario, but it kind of proves my point in all this. So let's say you want to buy the entirety of the Xbox first-party library this year, because that's where Game Pass really puts its value in, like day one games. Ultimate's all about day one games. Okay, if you wanted to buy all of these games here, Avowed 70, South of Midnight 40, Oblivion Remastered 50, and so on, all of these games would add up to $490. But as GameStop said, you get to own them. I personally value owning my games. What's the price differential nowadays, right? Well, with the $30 a month that you'd be paying for Xbox Game Pass, you'd go to $360 for the year. So basically you're spending $130 more, aka the equivalent of not even 2 video games nowadays with a $70 price tag, to own everything you bought for the year, versus $360 a year to rent them and eventually see some of those games leave the service that are third party. Now, originally when Game Pass was $20 a month, this annual value was $240. And when you size up 240 versus 490 and 360 versus 490, I think it makes Game Pass a much stronger use case. Hence why so many people loved it. Yes, I don't get to own them, but I do get access at a much more fair value that I enjoy. I drew this comparison on Defining Duke. It's a lot like OG Gamers Stand Up Blockbuster, right? When I went to Blockbuster and I paid like $8 for a 1-week rental, and if it was a big game, or honestly as a kid, just one I really liked, I would pay like $14 for the 2-week rental period that Blockbuster did. Why was that value appealing to me as a kid? Because I didn't have a lot of money growing up. So for me, renting those games and getting them done in that weekend or getting them done in that week or 2-week period, that was very valuable to me. I didn't have $50 to spend on a brand new video game one time, but I did have, sometimes $10 to $15, and I could spend that there. And naturally in the world of Blockbuster, you make up the extra scratch over the course of the month. Maybe you buy it outright, which they let you do. And I also knew a lot of people growing up who stole. I never stole my Blockbuster games, but I know a lot of people who just like kept them. They just never returned them. Anyway, that's how Blockbuster established its value, the same way Game Pass established its value. Like, hey, you can't afford all these things, here's a cheap way to get in. That was the value proposition. I think closing that gap where it's just like, oh, I have to buy like 2 more games to own all this first-party library, why wouldn't I just go ahead and spend that? And that's in a case where you're buying all these games. For me, though, like if I weren't a reviewer, I played some of these games, but some of these I did skip out on. Like I would have probably skipped on South of Midnight. Frankly, I probably would have waited for reviews on Avowed because I smelled something a little bit off with that game. Tony Hawk, I skipped on. Call of Duty, I'm definitely skipping on. But if you just count for South of Midnight, Tony Hawk, and Call of Duty, I'm saving $180, which is now $50 more than the annual savings that Game Pass's new value is offering me. And that means that I can just take that money and instead spend it on other like third-party day one games even that are on Game Pass, or just third-party games in general. Like I now have that extra money. So my long-winded point in all this is that Xbox has made it really easy to say, go buy your games. And that doesn't really hurt them because obviously they'll laugh their way to the bank. If I'm like, screw you, instead of doing your subscription service, I'm going to buy Ninja Gaiden 4. They'll be like, okay, go right ahead. So it's not really like you're sticking it to them per se, but I do think for those of you who are looking into the best ways to spend your money, it's not ultimately up to me, but consider ownership versus rental and how we're kind of at this fork in the road right now where you can really make a stand. Like we just saw a rumor that said PlayStation 6 is going to have a disc drive. Physical games can live on. This type of preservation can live on. And it's in one of these moments where we stand up for like, hey, we don't mind digital games, but for a certain price, this is where you can kind of make your voice really, truly heard. The question is ultimately, will Xbox bend on any of this? And I really feel like they're in the phase of just gouging what remaining fans they have because the growth phase is over. Same thing with hardware. That's why they're charging more. They're done subsidizing. They're like, okay, we have the base. You're paying max value here. And this has bad implications for the next generation. If they're done subsidizing hardware costs, then I can imagine a world where PlayStation 6 undercuts them easily. I can also see a world where if Valve has a lot of marketability for the living room, they could also beat out Xbox in the living room with the value that Steam offers. And now you're trying to jack up your software prices. Like you went for $80 games. Now you're going all in on Game Pass. Like getting into that ecosystem next generation is going to be slim pickings, I think. So how does Xbox feel about this, right? Well, The Verge spoke with the director of communications at Xbox, and they had something to share here in their article. They said, quote, "We understand price increases are never fun for anybody, but we're trying to reinforce by adding more value to these plans as well," Blackwell said. "It's something we don't take lightly, and we're listening to the feedback of players in the community to try to provide them with more of what they're asking for," end quote. Like you could just feel the boardroom meeting in a lot of these comments. Like, if we just keep hammering away, this is what you want, this is what you want. It's not, like, what company doesn't get this? It's not up to you, dude. I don't care what you think sounds good. We decide what the good value is. And I know it has to make sense for you, but you don't get to tell us, we're giving you more of what you want. Ubisoft's having like a horrible last few years. Who is out here going like, yes, Ubisoft games have been added to my library. I got 40 plus Ubisoft games. And on top of that, Fortnite. Who's out there going, yes, $30 a month for this, plus everything I already had? The thing that people are paying for, and this is where Xbox failed the most, they're paying for day one, they're paying for the library. frankly, I don't even believe they should be paying for cloud streaming. I think that'd just be a great service to offer as part of your ecosystem. Microsoft Rewards was another thing that was separate from Game Pass. You pulled it in. It's these things that your own platform decided were valuable, but that you decided to try and pack value into a service that I don't think was making as much and growing as much as you wanted it to. And so therefore, you're trying to inflate the value and gouge the remaining customers you have left. So no one was asking for a price increase, of course. But no one was also asking for, hey, you know what would make Game Pass worth it? You know, $30 a month, Fortnite V-Bucks. Like, it's a boardroom ass move. I'm telling you, man. Ubisoft Classics. That's it. If it was Ubisoft Plus Premium, I think you might have a little bit of a case. Like, oh, I don't have to pay for Ubisoft games day one on Xbox. I could be kind of on board with that. For $30, you're still really pushing it because it's just a lot, bro. That's a gym membership. I was paying like almost $40 a month for a gym membership. I'm not even trying to sound like a health guru, but like, I think your money is more well spent at the gym than $30 a month on Game Pass. Like, this is the territory we're getting into. Peloton subscriptions and whatnot. It's insane. Like, that's how high it's gotten. But it has become that high because Xbox is, again, trying to drain the remaining funds from their existing fans. Now, when we saw this news, again, the Game Pass profitable or not debate came up. And Xbox president Sarah Bond says Game Pass is still profitable. Here's the quote. During an interview at Tokyo Game Show 2025 with Game Watch via machine translation, Xbox president Sarah Bond was asked about how viable Game Pass is as a business, with the interviewer citing the price alongside the increasing number of titles. Bond responded that in the last fiscal year, Xbox took in $5 billion in revenue, saying that, quote, it's a profitable business, and as more creators join Xbox Game Pass, payments to creators increase, so we think it's a good business for creators, end quote. So you see here, this happened at Tokyo Game Show. So this interview happened before the price increase happened. Now, I'm not stupid. We know the president of Xbox knew this price jump was coming. So she says Game Pass is profitable, $5 billion in revenue, which by the way is different between like what the profit and losses are, but $5 billion in revenue, profitable, great for creators. You're paying more creators out, and now we're charging people more. In a world where we don't know how profitable it is where I have to be a little fair in it all. But reading that this service generated billions of dollars and you made money off of it, and you still decided, let's charge more, and tried to justify it by being like, hey, we're adding 75 plus day one games on Game Pass. Well, you know what most of those are? Let's be real. It's indie games, right? Which are much cheaper deals. We just had the head of the ID at Xbox program say they made their largest investment in Game Pass to date. Chris Charla spoke with Eurogamer and discussed the current state of the subscription service in the face of recent criticism, noting positive sentiment from developers and a desire to return for future projects. Quote, the majority of partners who have had a game in Game Pass want to bring their future titles to the service. As a result, we've signed deals with more than 150 partners to expand the catalog. We continue to engage with hundreds of partners each year to review upcoming titles. Last year, we worked with over 50 teams to sign their first Game Pass deal. This marks our largest investment in Game Pass to date, and we remain focused on delivering the most exciting and diverse catalog in gaming, end quote. And look at the most successful games of the year. A lot of them are indie, right? So I don't want to hear this, well, 75 plus day one games, when most of them are indie and they're playing small ball with these indie teams. They're not spending as much as they're trying to tell you. They're giving you high numbers like 150 partners, 50 teams. Like, am I in the room looking at the sheet going, I know how much they're spending? Obviously not. But when it is an indie program, these developers charge less because they have lower operating costs. They're usually just trying to get exposure, which, by the way, you got to wonder about that at this point. When day one is no longer a factor, right? Unless you're in the highest tier. Do indies benefit as much? Because it's probably just cheaper and better for the developer to just go and spend your money directly on their game, because many indies find themselves in that like $20 area anyway. But now you have to pay $30 a month to get day one games, and the next tier below that is $15 a month, and you don't get day one games. I do worry a bit about how great Game Pass was for exposing indies and how it's not really going to be that anymore. This part I think sucks the most. Maybe I feel that the most because like I'm an indie dev myself. Look, like, yeah, if people ask me a million times, like, would you ever put your game on Game Pass? And before this, I would have been like, hell yeah. Nowadays, I'd really have to think about it. I don't know what my answer would be. But I look at like games earlier this year, like Blueprints, that really got signal boosted through Game Pass. Like a lot of, hey, I'm going to try this out. Like spreading the word for indies is so valuable. And I don't think Xbox has to run their business completely around that, but it really helped that community out. I've heard such great things about indie devs and their experience with Game Pass. No More Robots has been really open about how they like put every game on Game Pass because it just always helps them out. So I'm glad Xbox is still investing in them, but I do worry about, as people are leaving the service in mass, the lack of exposure that comes with that. So ladies and gentlemen, this is how Xbox is feeling about the Game Pass price hike. They're still profitable. They were profitable before this, apparently. We don't know by how much. They hear you, but they're trying to give you more of what you want. All these, like, terrible. No foresight, by the way, either. Just terrible. Just like, this is the plan. And if we just keep saying it's good for them, they'll believe it eventually. I just hate companies that treat you like mindless drones. Like, oh, yes, Xbox, you are correct. This is good for me. Like, what are we doing, bro? All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts down below. I'll catch you in the next one. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.